What's up, Rockstars? Welcome to my review of Kingdoms Forlorn. I know you guys have been waiting for this, but as someone who's played Aeon Trespass Odyssey as well, this system was very interesting to play, especially when they put a 2.0 on it. So let's see what all the fuss is about. Thank you to my channel sponsor Into the AM. As a company that believes hard work and a great product is a proper way to conduct business, I am delighted to have them as part of the channel. They have some of the coolest graphic t-shirts around and an absolute best fit and feel that has continually exceeded my expectations. With new shirts arriving all the time and other products like boxers, hats, and even a monthly shirt club, I wholeheartedly recommend them to you. Check out the link in my description of this video for an exclusive 10% off everything they sell. Now, as always, a huge shout out to my patrons and YouTube members. It is through their financial support that this channel is possible. They allow me the freedom to be able to cover what I want to cover in the way I want to cover and tackle some of the tough subjects that I hope you guys appreciate. If you appreciate that level of independence, there is a link down below and your donation is greatly appreciated. Additionally, there are some benefits for you as well. There's a great Discord, there's a good community over there on Patreon, and we have a lot of cool stuff there like weekly update videos exclusive for that platform where you guys learn my early thoughts on some things. You guys hear what's going on, what's coming up, all that kind of stuff, and can really help guide and direct the channel because at the end of the day, I do these videos for you guys, the community. So I hope you appreciate it regardless. And again, if you'd like to donate, there is a link down below. I actually have the name of a new patron. I wanted to shout out Nick Stefanski. Nick, welcome. I am glad to have you aboard. And if you'd like to join Nick, again, link down below. Now, let's go ahead and jump into this. The first thing I want to cover before anything, there are really two. But the first thing is that if you have already backed Aeon Trespass Odyssey, this is actually a benefit. That's an easier thing to do because it's just less to learn. It's based off the same core system. Now, there are changes and it's a different flavor of it and there are tweaks and it's not the same game like at all. It doesn't even feel necessarily like the same game, but there are a lot of shared things from the hard co-op mechanics to the escalation system and all that kind of stuff is there. So if you were interested in that in Aeon Trespass Odyssey, you'll be interested in that here. But it also means, at least for me, having already played the prelude to Aeon Trespass Odyssey, at least, you know, the prototype that they had, they've changed a lot. It made this really easy going into it. There are new things to learn, of course, and the map system's, you know, different, but also kind of familiar, and you get that a lot. If you've played any series of games, like, or even like Zombicide, where if you've played one, you can learn kind of, okay, here's this flavor of Zombicide, here's how this works a little bit different. So if the Zombicide you love and you enjoy that, then getting another one and kind of getting a different take on things can be very beneficial. Now, this is a much different than like a Zombicide iteration. It's a big leap, if that makes sense, but it does really ease into it. And so you're not going to have to learn a whole new system and make a whole bunch of mistakes or anything like that if you've had previous experience. So I wanted to get that out there because not every company does that. A lot of companies do something drastically different. So you have to read the whole rule book and really like go back to it. This was pretty easy for me. It honestly was pretty straightforward. There are some hang-ups I had. I will list those soon, but I just want to let you guys know. So, because I know a lot of you either backed Aeon Trespass Odyssey and either liked it or didn't back it and didn't like it. If you didn't like one, you're probably not going to like the other. And if you liked one, you're probably going to like the other. So you can go into it knowing that as well. Now, the other thing to address is table space here. Now, this is a quick throw-up I had before that sounds gross. This was a quick setup I just did for the video to kind of show a variety of things. For instance, we have the minion body parts there, but I have the boss on the board, and I just placed units around to make it look cool. Like, this is not necessarily the normal setup. You would want the tokens more at hand and more organized and whatnot. However, I have both systems here on the board with all of the characters, and you could play like this. And this is about half of a Warhammer table, half of a 6x4 foot table here. So that kind of gives you a sense. I could tighten it up a little bit, perhaps. It depends a lot on the map. You know, anytime you're doing a dynamic map, it can kind of sprawl. Oh, we just went right the whole way, right? And you might need to adjust it and stuff like that. We had to do that. But for the most part, the footprint is actually quite nice. It's actually better than Aeon Trespass. I was worried about that, but Aeon Trespass has a very heavy crafting system with your ship and everything like that, and research stuff, and those are big boards, and I had given some feedback on how big those were, and I think they actually made them smaller at the time, but even then, it was just more stuff. It wasn't just the map, and it wasn't just the board, it was that other system, and that's not really here per se. There is some loot stuff that we weren't really able to get into heavily with this prototype, so I can't comment on that, but I don't foresee it adding a lot of table space. So really, if you have a 6x4 foot table, you're going to be fine. You're going to be golden. This is easily played with room to spare. If this was spread out actually around the table, all 4 characters, no issue at all to have both out at the table at the same time. I was very pleased to see that, and so I wanted to kind of show that, represent that. So that was really nice. Okay, now another thing, before diving into like mechanics and stuff like that, let's go superficial, let's be super shallow with this. This game is freaking sweet. This game is, the art is so metal. I love it, I love it. This right here, this night pool, which is where you put your hard co-op tokens, this could be an album cover of some death metal, doom metal band, and I love it. This is awesome. And you saw that in the unboxing. I kind of talked about that, but just the style around the cards, or the Mortis cards with the skeleton, and it's almost like Day of the Dead kind of stuff. The art on the bosses and heroes are really cool. The miniatures are super unique. I'll talk about that in just a little bit, but the art is just super cool. And then you get like this stuff here, right? Like the enemy stuff that people aren't so sure about. I love this. I wasn't so sure in the unboxing either, but over time, especially with the story, with how it's written, with how your characters are, I'll talk more about the characters and their personality in a little bit too. It fits so well. If you like Dark Souls theme, in other words, if you like this gritty, dark, super metal, like just hardcore AF, like theme, but then have some kind of silliness, some kind of oddities, some kind of charm to it. That's what this exudes, and they nail it A+ perfectly. If that was their goal, perfect. They nailed the landing, and I really, really do enjoy that style, and so I really, really do enjoy this. It kind of reminded me of watching an anime a little bit, with like how ridiculous but serious some things are. If you've ever seen that, where they can throw like the most oddball humor, or, like they typically have like the woman trope that like likes to eat and just is constantly eating, that sort of stuff. In fact, that's kind of the meat night, and I'm a sucker for it myself. And I really, really, really did enjoy the theme, both just how it was written and the humor in it, but then also the art as well. Seriously, that's the sickest place that I put tokens ever in any video game. If more games had places like that to place tokens, I'd be placing tokens all the time. That is awesome. Love it. So that was really good. Additionally, I think the theme of the worlds will probably come out quite well when it comes to the story plus art combo. Really, there's a little bit of mechanics, but not a huge amount, at least in this one. I imagine other ones have another mechanic to it, but it's like a single mechanic, maybe 2, and so it's not like a huge thing there per se, but just theme, story, all of that. Great, love it. All right, let's talk about the minis. They are you guys know how unique these are. Like this Ser Sanch with his little Ser, his monkey. Love it. I have nothing else like this in my collection, and you guys know how much I love saying that. It's why I seek out games like this to cover. It's not that, oh man, every game I cover is that. Well, I mean, kind of, that's because I'm seeking that out. It's not necessarily because every game is unique. Far from it. And the Egg Knight. I mean, it just. First of all, they're quite big, which is nice. They're very well sculpted. They exude a very good personality of what you would kind of think. Reading about him, like I read a one part where his like head was twitching in a very creepy way. I did not like it at all. But having that combined with the elbows back kind of thing. I talked about this a little bit in the unboxing, or just how amazing of a miniature Kara is. She is fantastic as a miniature. Just They're wonderful. They are very well done. They exude personality. And anytime I feel I can look at a miniature and start to get a sense of the character that it is, great sculpting. And so then the only thing to do is get the detail right and the size right. Size looks good. Detail, obviously, I can't tell quite yet, but I have seen what they're going to be doing with Aeon Trespass Odyssey. I have no qualms recommending this if you just like the miniatures. It's probably going to be pretty great. All right, and then before we move on to the map section of things, I do want to kind of point out that that humor, that a little bit of silliness in there. It's very subdued. It's not in your face at all. It's not like people are cracking jokes. Spider-Man is in here with his one-liner quips. It's not anything where it's like, oh, this was purposely there to be silly. But it is kind of humorous. So as an example, right? The Meat Knight here, that's what I'm going to call him, more on that in a little bit, but he like just was like, they had these egglings, right? And he's just making a helmet out of them. He's just carving up the stuff. And so the characters interact, right? Like they actually have personality here. And so Sir Sanch goes up to him and is like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm making a helmet. You're wearing one. You know what a helmet is, right? And so he's a little dumb. And so Sir Sanch is like, well, yeah, but I mean, so do you. He's like, yeah, but helmets break. You know, nice to have a spare. And so then Sir Sanch is like, okay, yeah, sure. Can you make two? And then you can actually do that in the mechanics as well. So where they can both essentially benefit from having the helmet. And so it's just very cool that the story has personality, right? It's not the same thing you've been playing all the time. You know, I dig on games that just are like, read story that's a generic fantasy crap, play the cool game that probably has great mechanics. The story part is always lacking for me, almost always, especially in narrative games. They're cool, they're great, but they're not what I want, right? I have another video coming out a little bit more about that, but suffice it to say, having the personality, having the interactions there, having the slight humor in there, I was chuckling reading quite a few different things. Like there were some actual like giggles involved in some of these things, and again, it's done so well. It's very sublime. It really, really did enjoy that. But again, if you don't like the Dark Souls sort of like theme where it's a little zany, but also like, like grimdark, if you just want that grimdark, then maybe not for you, because this does have that as well. It's definitely prevalent, especially in the story. Now, speaking of stories, like I said, there are actually interactions between the characters. It's normally only two characters, and more on that in a little bit, but like if you might be reading a story bit for the Meat Knight, and it involves the player of Sir Sanch, and they can make a decision, right? And in that case, the decision was like, hey, are you actually even going to like go talk to him, right? But you don't know that. You're just busy. It'll just say like, hey, if you're playing Sir Sanch, you can spend these resources. It's usually clues or something like that. And then you can read another section. And that might be a benefit. You know, who knows what's going to happen there, but there is interaction there. And I really did like that. That was very nice that there was that. They even hint at a friendship mechanic that was not in there. It says it was in the full game, but suffice it to say, they can build relationships among each other. You're marking off this big sheet. I didn't put that on there. There is a night sheet that you can print out to mark like the decisions you made and stuff like that. But you can track all that stuff there, and really did enjoy that it involved other people. It wasn't just you reading your story, right? Well, it's your story and that's your purpose. You're with this group, and it's aware that you're with this group, and so there is some interaction there. However, like I said, there is an issue where it's just normally one person. So while the story is nice, it interrupts the map a little bit. And I didn't really like how often it interrupted, because it seemed almost always, because you're like, every time you're traveling, you're pretty much getting clues. Somebody's like, oh, hey, I can read this part now. So you read that part. It's interesting and it's cool, especially the first time through, at least. But it is kind of like a move. Okay, who's got a story? Okay, yeah, you go ahead and read your story, and then you sit and read there. And then if you're Meat Knight, you're interested because you're reading that. And if you're Sir Sanch, at the very end, you're like, oh, and Sir Sanch can do this. You're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And so then you go, and then you follow another bit of story that proceeds to, and then again, it involves both of them. Meanwhile, the player of Kara and the Reinholder here, or Renholder, or whatever his name is, the wizard guy, they're just kind of chilling. I mean, they're listening, they're interested, of course, but they're not as involved, if that makes sense. I think stuff like Storm Thunder has the characters interact more in the story. However, it doesn't necessarily have the make decisions. And so these two are much more into this than in other games that might involve the other characters more in conversing with one another and talking to each other all at the same time, or at in the same story event. But there's typically not mechanics involved in that. And so pros and cons there, but for the most part, I liked it. I liked that there was story in the map. and I like that it was there. I wish there was more interaction among them. I think it would have made the interruptions in there more bearable, because at that point you are actually invested. You can make it. There's some decision point for you as a player, right? To actually make a decision to be invested. You don't want to just go up and go, refill your drink every time Meat Knight is busy reading about how he loves meat. Because you're not involved at all. And until you come back and you're like, oh, hey, you can make a decision to talk to me. It's 2 clues. You want to actually be there if you're all involved a little bit more. And there are some others where every person makes a test. So it's not all that way, but a lot of it is. So I would like to see that improved. And not just with skill checks, of course, either. But if nothing else, include them more into the story, even if they don't have a decision to make, so that you're kind of interested in, oh yeah, I'm gonna hear what my character is involved in this. How's my character going to react to Meat Knight doing whatever Meat Knight's doing? One other thing about the story, and this is, I think, the last thing I'm going to say about the story, actually, is that I was actually surprised that there was such heavy adult language. So just as an FYI, there is like the F word in here and a few other kind of heavy hitters, but the F word was kind of the standout to me. I'd actually like to see that lowered. Not that I'm offended by adults using adult language, but everything else in this game is not like that. Everything else is very PG-13. It's not overly gruesome or anything like that. It talks about blood a little bit and stuff like that. I'd have no problem playing this with even my youngest daughter. I don't really have an issue with that. And I know everybody has a different threshold and stuff like that with their kids, and you guys can make your own decisions on how you parent your kids, and that's fine. But either way, like if this was a movie, it would suddenly, I think, edge towards the R rating for just language. And that seems silly. Either it should just be like rated R and it's just hardcore stuff, or maybe I feel that should maybe match the rest of it. At least, again, that's like, movies and how they work. Everything's different. It just struck me as odd. I was not expecting that, because everything else is, you're fighting these cool knights, and, yeah, the knight's a little creepy at times when he's twitching his head all weird, but, whatever. And, it talks about people being attacked, and it's not that bad, though. Like, it really isn't. It's very, very, I think, honestly, fairly kid-friendly for, maybe a little bit older kids, especially mechanically, but it's co-op. You can always help your kids. But either way, it struck me as odd, so I wanted to note that. And I don't know how far it goes. And I don't know if the story, again, this is just a prototype. If it does get into some heavy stuff, it's something maybe to ask and get some answers to, just so you know what you're getting into. Anytime there's a narrative thing, you always wonder, like, okay, how core are you gonna get here? Like, is this gonna get awkward if I play with my mom? Like you don't know, right? And so depends on your mom, I suppose, too. Anyway, just thought I'd note that. I thought it was a little weird. I'd like to see that toned down just to match the rest of it. I mean, the worst thing is like skeletons, I guess, really. I mean, it's not that bad. But then there's like the F-bomb in there too. So, okay. Okay, let's talk about exploring the map and actually doing that. First of all, I do like the exploration tokens a lot. Or not the tokens, the cards. They have some very interesting mechanics where you're laying down, treasure chests, or you're able to just instantly go to some other place, or it's like you're gonna go on an adventure, but Meat Knight is leading the way. He's in charge now, and there's a lot of interesting things that can happen. So mechanically they are very sound, and I always enjoyed drawing them, or I always enjoyed rolling for an exploration story event. All that was always fun. But the cards in particular have some great mechanics involved. However, they are just mechanics. There's zero flavor really in here. There is a little bit, like the title might give a hint, like it'll say Phantom Thief on it or something like that, right? You'll get a little bit of a, okay, this makes sense based off the title, but it's you drawing the bridge between that. I would have liked some kind of small flavor text. It doesn't need to be a lot. Some of these cards already have a lot of mechanics on it. But even something like, a mysterious mana, or just something in there perhaps to give it a little bit more than just reading mechanics, if that makes sense. Like if you're going to place a treasure chest, have somebody notice it. You catch a glint, or something like that. I think would benefit those. Because everything else has so much story to it, it was actually surprising to me that the exploration cards are not. It could be me assuming, hey, just like most other games, exploration cards are like a little scenario. These are pretty much just mechanic, and when you're rolling story, those are the scenarios. Could just be some wording issues where I came in with an assumption, but either way, I think it would benefit from just a smidge of flavor text. Not too much, don't slow it down, but I think that would be kind of nice. Speaking of exploring the map, I loved the fact that everybody has their own story, because it means everybody has their own objective and mechanics. which means when you're sitting there like, we could go this way, this way, this way, this way. Well, the Sir Sanche player might want to go, what, this is a large one here and it has a red and I could really use the red, right? And, but then, the meat knight guy might pipe up and say, well, yeah, but, the last time we did that was a dead end and then we'd have to backtrack. And every time he has to backtrack, he has to roll. It could be good. It could be bad. It's a gamble. If he's not feeling like gambling right now, well, he's going to push against the backtracking because there is a chance that he could have an issue with that where he loses the scent of the hunt or whatever. Like, it's all thematic and I'm not going to like spoil too much there, but every single person has a different objective that has some slight overlap. Whether it's just the clues they want, whether it's a mechanic they bring to the actual map exploration, like I said, with him and backtracking, or Kara getting dead ends, right? There's that too. So there's just, it's very interesting to do that. Each person, it makes a discussion as a team very interesting because you're all on this team together, you're all working together, you're all helping each other, building friendships, but at the same time, you're your own person, you want to do your own thing. So it's not just the normal discussion around the table of, I want to go up, oh no, I think down south would be kind of cool, or let's go west. That's more of a, I have a preference kind of thing, as opposed to there are actual mechanics ingrained in the different knights to where you actually do have a goal that you're seeking and you're trying to appease everybody's goal. Ideally, everybody gets it because you just benefit from it. You become stronger. It's definitely worthwhile. So you're trying to manage everybody's needs. Very cool discussion. And I really liked how that enhanced the normal discussion around which way do we want to go. It made the map exploration really enjoyable, which was pretty cool. All right, now you knew this negative was coming, especially if you saw the unboxing. I can't read this card. Like, that card is, like, I can see it says Nobles District, but if you want, and I know that's a W, and I know that's an East, but if you want me to really read that, it's not happening. And this is with a pretty good amount of light pumped on the table. It is a prototype, right? And so this is the time for feedback. So when I say it's a negative, I'm not like, don't buy the game, it's impossible to read. I don't know. If they don't change it, I'm going to say, yeah. But there's all the time in the world to change that stuff too. So, and actually, I should have prefaced this earlier. They actually reached out and were like, hey, like, let us know if you run into any issues. We're all for feedback and stuff like that. So definitely a high probability that anything I say, they'll at least look at and address. Whether they'll fix it, whether they decide, whether they agree with me, that's up to them. And frankly, I don't care. I'm just letting you know my opinion of it right now. I can't read that card. That needs to be legible. In fact, even like these large ones, because of how dark it is, but again, prototypes often actually are printed darker than normal. Normally you up the contrast. It's more of a first print kind of thing. And then you're like, oh yeah, no, you need to brighten that crap up. But the symbols underneath the size of the card, because it's on a white with black, is like darker color with black text on it. It's a wash for me. And my eyesight's like getting bad, but I know some people have really bad eyesight, and yeah, that's just not going to happen. You're going to be really leaning over to read that. So definitely needs to be fixed, my opinion. All right, now let's go and shift to the combat section of things where you're actually going to be fighting things. And FYI, you fight things in the story, but it's story fighting, right? So it's like, haha, roll. Okay, yeah, you beat him. Good job. That kind of stuff. So real combat. Let's talk about that. A few things here. First of all, I do love the hit wound system. It's the same that you kind of see in like Warhammer and stuff like that. A lot of heavier games will get that when it comes to having a double roll system. In other words, you have to hit and then you have to see if you actually wounded. And I actually really enjoy that, mainly because it gives you two highs instead of just one. I always love big yes moments in games where you jump up and you go, yes, like I almost thought of rating games based off how many times I do that, because that's the style of game I like. If I hear that somebody had a ton of those moments in the game, I'm suddenly interested. If I find out that game also has cool minis, I'm all in. Let's do this, right? I mean, like that is, I'm a simple guy to please. I want fun and I want cool. Give me those two things. I can overlook some balance issue. Okay, so that's a side thing. The hit wound, I apologize, is great. It really is. It's nice because first you just like, okay, I got him, and like, okay, I got him. And so you instantly get a little bit of satisfaction, right? Okay, I'm gonna hit. And now it's gonna see, okay, now how hard am I gonna hit him, right? And then you roll your wound and you're like, bam, got him. Love it. It's great. I very much enjoy that. And even if you didn't, right? Even if you didn't, there's other things as well. You know, there's the reaction that changes, and like, oh crap, you know, you got to deal with this. There's the hard co-op stuff. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So I'm not going to do it right now. But there's some play there. There's re-rolls, stuff like that. So the mitigation's quite good as well. And the manipulation. But also, it's just fun. I really enjoy the double hit system. It especially works well with critical. So you have this one white die here, and again, you can look at other videos to really learn how to play if that's your thing. This review is already long enough without that. But you always roll this die, even if you only roll one die. This is the die you roll, and if it gets a natural 10, well, guess what? You have a critical chance. Just a chance. You still have to wound, but the stakes are so much higher. When you get that, you are like, I am going to hit this. I'm going to use all the tokens, right? You start taking out of that pool like nobody's business. You're like, I'm going to guarantee this lands. You do the critical hit. There's a critical reaction that happens to that. It's always amazing. It's a lot of fun. Love the combat system of that. It's just pleasing to me. It's something I'm drawn to. It's something I like in stuff like Warhammer. It's something I like in like a lot of these boss battlers. It's just a fun system that I enjoy greatly. Very, very cool. Love doing that. I also love the full hit, full miss system. In other words, like you're rolling a lot of dice, right? But you do that for the hit as well. And this is why it's different than a wound. Normally in a lot of board games, you're going to roll and you're just going to count swords versus shields, right? And you might have an asterisk there or something like that. In this case, you have this little broken glass thing that you can use a pierce or a break to, like, you know, get an extra hit in. There's a little bit of fun gameplay mechanic around that, but for the most part, it's very straightforward, which I appreciate. It's quick resolution, right? You know what you got when you got it, right? You don't need to start referencing this and referencing, you know, you just do it, which is good. But with the hit chance, you're rolling multiple dice for that as well, and each dice that hits the threshold is a hit. So you're doing multiple hits, and that's really, really cool, or multiple misses, because it allows you then to do a full hit versus a full miss, which are very big things. There's even a full evade because you roll multiple dice for an evasion as well. And what's just really fun about that is just that it's another mechanic to do, and it feels really good when you get a full hit. When you know every single one of these are hitting, you're like, oh yeah, this is gonna... It just enhances that quick resolution of the combat roll that you always get in a good, nice, streamlined combat system relatively easily. And again, there's not a ton of like finicking around with dice or symbols you gotta go look up or anything like that. For the most part, you see the number of their 2 hit, you roll your dice, you either did it or you didn't. It's still quick, it's still smooth, it's just a pleasant combat experience. And I very much enjoy that when it comes to the dice. Very, very good. Another nice thing that is a little different here, at least from what I played of Aeon Trespass Odyssey, is the minion system and the enemies there. I have the body parts here, you can see, and instead of the they're just called BP parts. I don't even think they define it in the game. But instead of actually being like body parts that you're hitting, it's the different enemies, and they're ranked, 1 through... It reminds me a little bit of Storm Thunder in that case, which is a good thing. But it works really well, because each of them have, the different reaction. They're different units, so like, oh, I could be fighting the bone, Squire number 1, or it could be fighting the armor head or the bone at arms, so there's a variety of different enemies that you're fighting, and they react differently and have different stats. Some like the armor head guy has more armor because he's got armor on his head, and he's very proud of it too. He's like smiling. I love it. It works quite well, because essentially you just remove the card or not, right? And so it's like you're attacking that card. Oh, I hit it. Okay, you move that card. Oh, man, you escalate. Okay, well, now you add 1 back. Except at a higher level. So you're fighting higher level enemies. More enemies are coming into the combat. It also is... I love the idea that more enemies are coming. Like, it thematically, it's nice that it's not just a X versus Y, right? It kind of morphs a little bit, and felt quite nice. And again, was very smooth and streamlined. Always appreciate both those words and actual gameplay, like how it plays, not just the mechanics, but just how it feels playing through it. Had no issue with that. I was kind of worried it might be finicky to use the BP system you normally use for bosses for multiple enemies. Works great. Loved it. Now, that being said, I mentioned escalation, and at this point, I still don't like escalation. It's actually simpler than it looks. But I think it should just be simpler, period, if that makes sense. for the most part, it's, hey, did you destroy number 1? Add a number 2. Hey, did you destroy number 2? Add a number 3. Did you destroy number 3? Okay, well now maybe it depends, right? Right. And so you end up with like a table of a chart of what to do. And once you learn it, it's fine. It's not too bad. There is a little bit of oddity with the discard and whether you shuffle the discard back in or whether you don't. I would almost rather just not worry about the discard and just put numbers in, and there's just less cards if you kill 3 or something. Like, it just, there's too many, I feel, avenues, and I don't feel like that adds a lot for me, at least in the fight I've played. Now, I need to play a lot more of either Aeon Trespass Odyssey, can't wait to do that, or Kingdoms Forlorn, can't wait to do that, but for now, I have the prelude of ATO, and I have this for this system on how they do the escalation, and it works. It's not actually super complex, but I still feel it's bigger than it needs to be of a mechanic. I think it should just be as streamlined as the BP cards for the minions, where you just move it, swap it, and move it, swap. And they have a little bit of that finickiness as well once you remove a 3. Like, I just don't want a table, really. It flows nicely. It's not super complex, but I still feel it should be trimmed down a little bit. My preference on that, anyway. I'm going to drop that card and leave it on the floor. Okay, another thing. I know I mentioned at the beginning that you don't have a lot to learn if you've already played ATO, or if you backed ATO and you're going to be playing it. By the time you get Kingdoms Forlorn, you're going to know how to kind of work the co-op system for the most part. Again, there's a different spin on it. You're going to know how to do a lot of this kind of stuff, the escalation, stuff like that. A lot of even the map exploration and the concept of getting things when you move to a new tile, like a lot of that is repeated, and it's great because it just means you're not starting from 0. Right? You're starting from like 5 and you get to 30. Like, you still need to learn stuff. The majority of the stuff you have to learn for this game, I felt, at least the stuff that I was like, I need to learn this because I apparently haven't, because I can't remember enough, is the keywords. There are quite a few keywords. It makes sense. You're not interacting with all of them all at once, but especially because essentially every token is a keyword, and there are actually quite a few tokens. And then there are negative tokens you can get, and it is a lot to remember, especially when enemies have their own unique keywords. For instance, the Iron Cast Dead, they have Swarm and Gang Up, that you'll see on their cards that only they have, so you'll only see them there. There is an explanation of them. They have them here, which is nice. And then they can also gain, counter and Iron Cast and stuff like that. There are traits you have to learn, but again, they're there. But it's just a bummer to learn so much. I don't like it, so I'm going to put it as a negative. I like the variety that it provides. But I think there are some games that have a lot of different things that can happen, but they're not all happening at once or all the time, so you only have to worry about a subset at a time. And at least for me, when I first got into this, and again, this would ease up with progressive play, of course, right? I mean, by the time you're finishing Kingdoms Forlorn, you would just know everything memorized. But I don't, right? And so I was constantly looking up and, okay, what's this? They do have it listed nicely, which is good. They do have a lot of symbols, so you can find it quickly through that, and not just the alphabetical list that they provide. They explain it quite well, but it is a lot. So it's definitely up there. So if you're really averse to that, it might be something to kind of think about. It's kind of like if you decided to make a deck of magic cards, but you're not doing like the recent deck only, right? The recent release only. You're doing like, let's do it for the last 15 years. And so you have all these different keywords, and you're like, I don't know, what flanking? What the heck is flanking? Poison? What is? And like, if you go way back, right? Like, it's kind of like that, where you get, it is quite a bit. For me, all at once. And so the first playthrough, that was probably the biggest hang up. It's just looking that up. It's nothing major, and I'm used to it because I'm terrible at memorizing things, but it is what it is. Okay, one thing I kind of alluded to here is the bosses have these like traits. Love it. These traits are very fun. It depends on the level of your fighting. In other words, you can fight an Egg Knight or the Egg Knight. I'm not even going to say which, at different levels. A level 0, level 1, level 2. And they get different traits. And those traits are actually quite different. It does change a lot. It's not just a stat change. And for the most part, the stats don't change too much. So there is that. I mean, it's like 7+ to hit, that's always there. 5 movement, that's always there. He just gets more health. right? So the stats aren't too much. It's more along the different traits. There's some setup stuff as well that'll change. So fighting him, it won't just be the same exact, like situation, essentially. It'll change. And those traits are all different. They're all different mechanics. Some you're putting armor tokens on things, and those are a variety of different mechanics that introduces for that fight. And I actually really like that. It adds a lot of variety, I feel, to it. And I feel like fighting a level 3 Ignite is much different than fighting a level 0 Ignite. So props to that. I did like that. Now, besides those traits, I didn't really get a sense of how the Ignite is unique among the other bosses. Now, that's not to say that there isn't there. I've only fought him, so I can't say. I don't have a comparison for that. When I had the prelude to Aeon Trespass Odyssey, that came with several bosses, and they felt very different. This might be the case here, and Ignite is the only one that feels like this, and other ones are vastly different. I don't know. Can't say. I can say that it wasn't obvious for this. For instance, in Aeon Trespass Odyssey, you fight like this labyrinth bull. I forget what he's actually called, but essentially he's like zipping around the arena, and he's actually laying these labyrinth tiles. But he's not just like laying them behind. I imagine them falling from the sky almost, but I think they actually pop up behind him. But either way, they can land on top of you, and you like get dazed or damaged or whatever, and then you're like in the labyrinth, and then suddenly you have to like I would love to go fight him, but I have to find my way out of this little area, so he doesn't just charge it. Very unique experience, right? Like that is like, okay, I can see how that's probably different than any other fight. I didn't really get to that here. All of his attacks are thematic, both in the art, both in what's happening to you, both in the title, the flavor of it, right? All of that, it felt like I was fighting an Ignite for sure. But what does an Ignite really bring to the table versus maybe just a normal knight? I didn't really get a strong sense of that. So that was something I felt they probably could have done better in the prelude for, personally. Maybe put a dragon in there next time. I don't know. I just know that with this one example, it seemed fairly standard in what it was. Like, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, yeah, of course, because he's an egg. Like there was nothing quite like that, which kind of makes sense for the character, but at the same time, it's something to look into when you look at the campaign page, when you're looking at the game and you're thinking, okay, these are the bosses. Can you see how those would be different than the Ignite? Just put that in mind. I'll be doing the same thing. Okay, we're almost done here. The hard co-op mechanics, best thing about the combat in both Aeon Trespass Odyssey and in Kingdoms Forlorn. I put it above the escalation, getting stronger as you're weaker. The whole like Goku Super Saiyan kind of thing that they advertised in Aeon Trespass Odyssey. I put it above that. I put it above the Triskelion system. Put it above anything, the Metroidvania kind of map exploration a little bit, which by the way, this has less of, at least the Kingdom I played. I'd put it above all that. What it essentially does is it allows you as a character to lay down tokens for another person to use. And that is huge. Because when you're actually attacking, you see the back of the body part. Let me get one real quick, but I mean, you guys kind of know this, right? So the body part will have the number, the rank on the back. You don't know which body part it is, but you know it's a level 3 or it's a level 2 or it's a level 1. And so you kind of get a sense of how hard it's going to be to get it, right? And you'll have different weapons, a variety of weapons that do differently. So some might actually have a negative to accuracy. So they're really hard to hit, but they hit really hard. Or maybe they do a lot of damage, but there's different situations, right? Especially with abilities and stuff like that. Where's Sir Sanch on there? Because you can actually do that. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But just in general, you kind of have a sense of how hard it's going to be and what you can do and what your teammates that are going to come next can do. And you can plan to do that. In other words, you can be like, I'm not even going to try to necessarily beat this thing. Instead, I'm going to lay down a card and it's going to allow me to put all this stuff down so that when you fight the next one, you're going to hit that sucker because you have the plus to attack. What it ends up doing, and again, I explained this in the Aeon Trespass Odyssey video as well, is it means that you kind of fight almost like a whole. Now, it's kind of hard to explain because I think a lot of people feel that way about co-op, like, oh, you're going to move him here and you're going to do that. But for the most part, that's it. In other words, it's, I have reach 2, I'm going to do a pushback, he's there, now you can hit him. That's the extent of it. This still has that. plus this co-op mechanic. And it means, and I found this out especially with that bull in Aeon Trespass Odyssey. It was knocking me down all the time, and he has some stomps that are annoying, and there's, like, it happens, right? You're gonna get stunned where you're falling down, and you gotta get back up. And so in a lot of games, you don't want to stun the player. Because if you stun the player, they feel like they just, it's a turn pass. You know what, just pass for me. I'm going to go make this sandwich. I'm going to go catch some TV. I'll come back later. It's dumb. It's boring. I'm not even in this game right now, right? You almost never, it's the same thing with video games. You don't want to necessarily take away control from a player, or at least their investment in what's happening. That never happened. When I played both games, no person got up and just left. Nobody's doing that. Everybody's there and attentive because you're all planning the attack as a whole, right? So it could have been you were going to do the attack. Oh no, now I'm stunned. Okay, well, you know what? Instead of actually doing that, go ahead and get that body part. We're not going to get the other one, so go ahead and do that and just leave those tokens there. We'll use them later. Like, you're adjusting constantly to what's going on. And even you as a stunned character are busy planning and helping out and picking it out, because in a way, it's kind of one big combo system where your entire hero turn is all one big turn that you're all invested in. You all play a part of it. It's like a combo system where each of you do one of the hits. They've promised these kind of co-op attacks and stuff like that, and definitely we'll have to get a lot of playtime in on that to really see how much that is. They talk a lot about a 2.0. I wouldn't mark it as a 2.0. This is a little bit of an aside, but real quick, I think there is a sense or some marketing or something with the whole 2.0 system. Disregard that. It's a different flavor of the same thing. It's not inherently better. It's just different. Some might like it more, some might like it less. It definitely doesn't invalidate the last one entirely. And that's why I would almost caution nobody ever do a 2.0. I think it's a bad wording because it makes it seem like the 1.0 is bad. Not the case at all in this. It's the exact same system. It's one dot, 0.1 if you want, or whatever. It's just a different minor thing on the same core concept. And that core concept is that co-op experience, a true competitive, that's called hard co-op. And that's why it's actually built mechanically into being a cooperative. It's not just we happen to all do damage to the same guy and you can move him in my direction or something like that. It's I am actively affecting your turn and we're working together to make that turn something. I'm involved in that. Really do enjoy that. Highlight for sure, bar none, love it. Now, one thing they have here is a first and second ability window. And I personally wasn't a huge fan of this. Essentially, you have a first ability where you lay some tokens down. And for the most part, those go away. And then you have the second one where you can lay it down for somebody else. It's after they attack, essentially, right? So you kind of have an attack in between those two windows. And depending on when you're laying the token down, depends on well, it's actually the token that matters, but different tokens go in different windows, essentially. So whichever token goes in the first window acts differently than the token goes in the second. I can get that it's kind of cool. I think it's one of those things to me where conceptually it's interesting to read as a mechanic, but to actually play, I feel like it was unnecessary. I would have rather have had a little bit more of a streamlined, simple approach to it, closer to what was in Aeon Trespass Odyssey. So again, this is kind of where I talk about that there are kind of different flavors or different feels to the game. You're both doing hard co-op mechanic, but some might really enjoy this style and some might really enjoy this style, or you can just like it. And overall, I love the hard co-op system. Wasn't a fan of the two windows personally. It's not my thing. I would have liked it to just, I either put tokens down or I don't. And then you can just say whether you could use the tokens or not, I suppose. But I would honestly be okay with not being able to use any of the tokens I lay down, and all my tokens just always go to the next person, or, whatever it might be. So, it just depends. And some of that's from the card abilities here. Speaking of which, every hero plays different. They all have different things. For instance, Sir Sanch here. He has a monkey. You can place the freaking monkey. You can place the monkey on a body part. In other words, he jumps on the Ignite's back and he's like, doing monkey crap, and then, he's like, what the heck? And that allows you to attack that body part better. In other words, he's distracted. Now you can go for the head, you can attack that, and he can move around the guy and literally move around all the body parts and stuff. It is hilarious. It's awesome. That's only Sir Sanch. None of the other guys are doing anything like that, right? And then he also is like a really big buffer. He can just lay down stuff in the night pool like nobody's business. Everybody kind of has some motivation cards and stuff like that, right? But he is just like, you know what? Boom, 3 breaks. There you go. I just set you up with this ability. I'll get it later. They have a nice discard delay sync kind of thing where it's like, do I get it at the end of the clash, or do I get it, like real quick? And you can even move them around. There's some manipulation there. It's its whole little thing, but it's fine. Kind of similar to Oathsworn's cooldown system, but a little bit more rigid, I suppose. Definitely not as flowy as Oathsworn's is. But I did really like that. And that's, again, just him. So he's busy having his monkey on there, buffing everybody else's attacks. It's a lot of fun. I really did enjoy that. Versus, somebody like Rinholder here, who has all these Lux tokens. And he can spend these to do different magic abilities and lay down fire and do all that kind of stuff. And he's the one doing that. He can refresh his cards so he can get cards back really easy with these. Very, very nice. And again, everybody has something different. And so I really did enjoy that. It was great to see that. It reminded me kind of like a Massive Darkness 2 kind of thing, where it's like each hero has their own little mechanic to do. It's not just an ability, right? It's not just a simple thing like, I get to, I'm better at two-handed swords, so I'm gonna have two-handed swords, where you're better at that, so you're gonna be you're the armored guy because you have more armor. You have different stats, you have different hand limits. For his hand limit 7 plus the refresh. He has a lot of options available. He's a little magician, right? He's doing his little magic stuff, right? Versus him who has a hand limit of 5, for instance, or he has a health of 13, or or vitality. That's already there, but then that on top of that, the actual kind of different mechanics that you're doing, it makes you feel different. And it's very cool. I also imagine that if you have a choice of knights, whoever you bring there isn't just bringing their own story, isn't just bringing their own interactions, but is also bringing their own kind of flavor to the combat, though that the fight comes out a little differently, which is quite nice. I quite like that. Two more things. These Pearl arcs and Heroic arcs, I like these. Essentially, each person comes with a default things. For instance, Sir Sanch is cunning and he's a tracker, right? Versus Rinholder, who is ardent and a scholar. And you can essentially level up in them as you change your stats, and you get different bonuses in your cumulative. So it's like I have +2 to this and +1 to this, or whatever. But you can actually customize it. So you can be a Vanguard or a Lancer or a Fire Starter, or a Snatcher, or you can be Gracious or Voracious or Tenacious or Fervid. So you have these different options that you can lay down and kind of combo. You unlock them through story events and stuff like that. So it can change during the delve even. Very, very cool. I liked that a lot. I thought that was pretty cool. The only other thing I want to note, and I guess I'll leave it on, is the 3-star AI cards are hard. They hit hard. There's somewhere it's like, hey, did you take damage? Yeah, you're dead. Literally it's more like, hey, did you fail to dodge that? You're dead. Hey, did you just take a little bit of damage because some hits got through? Well, guess what? Now you might be dead. Go check. It's literally they hit. So if you have played stuff like Kingdom Death Monster or some of these harder boss battlers, I still fondly recall my first fight with the Broodmother in Oathsworn, where I died round 1, first hit. I was very overconfident as a Urza, just and then dead, right? Some of these games can be quite hard, can be quite punishing. Now there's balancing to all of that, right? And going in, hey, these level 3 AA cards, they're a beast, but I mean, some of them will just outright kill you. So FYI, there is a such thing as coming back. The fogs in the kingdom are quite weird how they work. And of course there's injuries and stuff you can get and whatnot. But yeah, in general, that was a big surprise when I started drawing stuff like that. I'm like, oh, okay, this is a battle now. I gotcha. So be prepared for that and know that going into it, that there are stuff where it just says you died. Not just the card. Even an AI card can just flat out kill you. It's not just a draw that. In fact, that's the best solution there. If you got hit at all from that attack, good luck. You're at you're at the whims of the card draw on that. Otherwise, it's just straight up dead. So really thought that was interesting and of note. I personally get a kick out of some of that kind of stuff, and it definitely makes you react, especially when it's like, oh yeah, we're confident. He's on level 3. We're going. And then, oh crap, Billy died. It's one of those kind of things where you're like, So yeah, very cool to see. But some people might be averse to that. So FYI, that's in there as well. And you know what? I think at that point, you've heard me talk about it enough. You've seen me react to the components and the art style and all that. You've heard me talk about the story and the map and the escalations and the combat and the dice rolls and the night pool, the hard co-op system, the solo stories, the interactions between characters. There's a lot that this game offers, and hopefully I helped you in deciding whether or not you want to back it down. This video is slightly late for the campaign on Kickstarter, so there is a link down below. You can go ahead and check it out yourself, see what the price point is, see what's available and what's not, and of course ask any questions either from me or from Into the Unknown. I'm sure they will be happy to answer any questions you have as well. And yeah, thanks for watching. If you'd like to see more reviews just like this where I talk in depth with examples from the gameplay that I had, there is definitely that subscribe button down there as well. And if you really appreciate it, there's of course that Patreon or YouTube membership button. Again, greatly appreciate it. Guys, have a wonderful rest of your day, a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll talk to you guys again very soon with another review, actually, plus some talking points. There's a lot coming up, and I hope to see you there. Take care, guys.